Welcome to Talking Live. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig, and it is Valentine's Day week, so our questions are all about love. And that is why we brought in an amazing expert all the way from Colorado, Heather Hans. She is a Renaissance woman because not only is she a psychotherapist and an author and an educator, but she also has a background in business and accounting. Is that correct,
That's
Heather?
Right.
I was so impressed with that.
Thank you. It's been a good way to have my left brain balance my right brain. So
Yes.
I can help clients reach goals and not just get caught up in talking, the whole time.
When you help them with finances, you really know what they're,
Right,
what they need to do,
exactly.
as opposed to me, who's just like, count on your fingers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have such an interesting background because, and we will have Heather's website so you can find her and find her books and find her courses, which we'll talk more about. But you do clairvoyant counseling. What is that exactly?
Well, I use my sensitivity and different types of tools like numerology and astrology to help people find who they are and what their path is, what their strengths are and what their weaknesses. That's just part of my practice. I also do traditional psychotherapy, but it's a great way to get to know yourself.
Yeah.
Chart readings.
So your clients, what have they learned as a result of using kind of this ancient form of understanding oneself?
I think one of the biggest values of this is that they feel like validated. They feel validated in some of the challenges or some of the dreams that they've had. They feel like, oh, this isn't just, there's not something wrong with me, or this isn't like some pipe dream. This is actually in my chart that I was born with. And it can also help them grow through learning about what their potentials are and really like how far they can go in life.
That's great. I mean, listen, I'm for whatever works because as everyone knows, when it comes to relationships, they're challenging. Whether you're single and navigating the dating scene or if you're in a long-term relationship, you can't avoid those challenges. And you talk about in your first book, and it's an ebook, and I highly suggest you download it because it's very easy to download. You talk about, I'm trying to find the name of your book, the first book, The Blueprint. That was your second
book.
Oh, that's your second book. Okay. So in that book, you talk about just your own personal journey with relationships and getting to a better place. Tell me a little bit about what people can find in your latest book.
Well, so much of relationships is about understanding yourself.
Yeah.
And so this book, the part of my journey that I talked about is my specialty in attachments. That was what my clinical training was in. How we form our attachment styles happens in those first couple of years of life through the way we attach with our parents, as you know.
Yes.
And so I talked about how that experience was for me and how that greatly affects your relationships as an adult. So if you can understand your attachment style, then kind of like the chart readings, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and work to capitalize on those strengths and kind of heal those weaknesses. And
you're reminding me of somebody I worked with recently who's in a long-term relationship, and she was having a very hard time understanding how her girlfriend could be needy in a way that she wasn't. And we talked about attachment styles, how some people are able to have a constancy with their relationship so they can really internalize the person that they're attached to and feel them with them, and other people not so much. So they need that constant feedback. And I think to frame things in that way can be very helpful, because what happens in relationships, I'm sure you see this as well, people often say, why can't you be more like me?
Right.
It's like we want someone like ourselves and then we don't.
Exactly. And actually the difference creates tension, which creates attraction and sexual attraction, that comes through tension. If we're too similar to someone, it's more like a brother-sister vibe.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that. And really, at least half the population did not get a secure attachment growing up. So, but the good news is you can change your attachment style and become more secure. And that was my experience, and I work on my clients with that, and they're able to do that.
So what tips do you have for people who want to feel more secure in their attachment style? And would you say this is true more for the person who's already in a relationship or for a person who's single?
Both, because there are a lot of people with insecure attachment styles who are in a relationship. Just because you're in a relationship, even if it's long-term, doesn't mean that you have a secure style or that it's a good relationship.
Right.
So this kind of goes back to my first book about self-love and really connecting with your highest self. I think a lot of mental illness is actually a spiritual illness, and that people don't feel that sense of solidity and that sense of calm within themselves. So depending on the person's attachment style, there are different techniques they could use, but overall, that's really at the heart of it is security rather than fear.
Yes. And when someone's dating, in the dating world, I'm sure you also treat many single people, as do I. And the hallmark of a new relationship is a lot of insecurity, not knowing where you stand, not knowing if the other person will truly like you, and vice versa. What do you say to people who are in the dating world and want to feel as good as possible in a world that can create insecurity?
That's so true. It really does create insecurity, right?
Yes.
We live, especially with social media and people comparing themselves all the time. I do have a lot of clients who wonder if the other person's going to like them and try to make the other person like them. And I bring them back to, but do you like them?
Yeah.
Again, back to you. How does this person feel to you? And one of the ways you can do that is to really start paying attention to your body sensations, because your body tells the truth much more so than the mind. The mind starts analyzing and justifying, and fear gets in. But your body will tell you if you're relaxed versus if you're anxious, if your chest is tight, and how do you feel around this person? And really just focus on how you feel around them, if you like them, rather than trying to get them to like you.
I think that's a great point, because part of being in a relationship, part of the goal and part of, I guess, the hallmark of being in a healthy relationship is, can you really become your best self? Can you become the person you're meant to be? And sometimes our partnerships can interfere with that.
Definitely.
Or really help us with that.
That is precisely right. I believe that the goal of relationships is to help you become your best self. And sometimes that is through the conflicts you face, but if it's hindering you, it's not a relationship to stay in.
So to your point, which I think is brilliant, if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling unsettled around this person, if you don't like yourself or are self-questioning in an increased way, maybe that is a sign that the other person isn't treating you right, or just is not right for you, period.
Definitely. I think that's a part of it. Like, part of it is us, part of it's the other person. But if you have an insecure attachment style, you're going to feel anxious and insecure. That's your part. And that's why it's important to do your own work and go to therapy and really work on your own style. There are two styles. One tends to push people away out of anxiety, and one tries to bring them closer. So realizing that you have these tendencies one way or the other, and then working on that, but then, really noticing how you feel in a room with this person compared to how you feel with someone who really loves you and you feel safe around. And because that's how you want to feel. You want the excitement and the little bit of tension, but you don't want to shrink around a person.
Yes.
Or constantly question yourself.
So one of the things I recommend to my patients is that I totally get if people want to be in a relationship. And if people don't want to be in a relationship, that's okay with me too. But I find a lot of people have a little bit of shame associated with really wanting to be in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I say, that's cool. If you want to be in a relationship, it makes complete sense to me. We live in a coupled world. Mm-hmm. Talking about attachment style, part of our survival really depended on, someone else. So that exists within us. And the problem, I think, is the myth that we've been taught, and you can tell me your thoughts, that we think it'll automatically happen. That we don't really know the difference between love and lust and how to get what we want. Your thoughts?
That is such a good point. And I love that you talk about, we think it's just going to happen, because I think that's true for everything in life. Yes, there is grace and things can flow, but generally there's something I believe called karma, where you reap what you sow. And if you work hard for something, that's what's going to bring you the reward. Yeah. And I have clients come in all the time who want a quick fix for their anxiety, for example. And I tell them, I have the techniques, these can change your brain, but you have to work at it every day, consistently. Mm-hmm. So I think for someone who wants a relationship, they really have to work at it, work at themselves, get to know their own quirks, because that's part of it, and really try different techniques, just like as an entrepreneur.
Yes. So somebody's single, male or female, they want to be in a relationship. It's Valentine's Day, so everybody's thinking about romance.
Definitely.
What do you recommend for the person that's single and really wants to be connected to somebody?
Well, going back again to self-love, and if you look at the law of attraction, we want to be happy people, and that's really what attracts people to us, and that's what attracts other happy people to us. Not that we're just flat and happy all the time, but generally joyous and have a sense of well-being. And so you want to keep bringing it back to that. Okay, if I don't have someone right this second, what can I do to uplift myself and my own joy? And that's, I believe, in what I've seen, how grace happens and how you do attract people. Mm-hmm. Because when you're chasing something, the natural response is for that other thing to run from you.
I was thinking about this. I was watching a reality TV show, and this one girl, I'm not going to say the girl and I'm not going to say the show, but she's a gorgeous girl, okay? And desperate for a relationship. And it repels all these guys, and it's like, I want to take her out of the television and bring her into my private practice because I feel like I could work with her.
Totally.
That this should not be happening, that if you do have self-respect, and you do set boundaries, that's incredibly appealing. I mean, in some ways, you have to be your own publicist. Would you want you in a relationship? Who are you in the world? Are you somebody that somebody could be proud of having in their life? So kind of working on yourself, the healthier you are, the healthier person you are going to attract. So that is definitely the case. Some of the other things I would say, since it's Valentine's Day out there, you want to be where people are doing things that you enjoy doing. Ask yourself, what kind of person do you want and where would they be? And what kind of person would they want and how close to that kind of person are you? So that would speak to the work that we need to do on ourselves.
Right, exactly. We don't always have to have the same interests, but you do want someone who has like a similar kind of heart and who's has an overall vision that's similar to yours.
And, you're not going to like everything the same, and there are no perfect connections. So I think if people understand there is no perfect, except for like in Hollywood movies, that would help them navigate through a lot of the challenges. You offer a course that's coming out. It's an e-course on relationships and anxiety. What can people learn if they take your class?
This is about creating profitable relationships of all kinds. So love relationships, friendships, business relationships. of all types of profits, love, money, and there is an anxiety bent to it. So for people who have issues of anxiety, which I don't know many people who don't at this point.
Sure.
I go into just general anxiety techniques, and then also how to apply those in relationships, like what we're talking about with the law of attraction and just being able to attract. Because I like how you pointed out the woman in the show was beautiful looking.
Gorgeous.
But it's the energy that really attracts.
Desperation.
Right, desperation, which anxiety creates
and
that.
These poor guys are so afraid. Like, she'll like come on, and she's just like asking, will you marry me? Like, as soon as she meets them, and she's too easy, and it scares them. Men like to chase ladies.
They do.
And the nice thing is, and I tell the women in my practice, it's different for men, but I tell the women in my practice, do less. Less is more. You don't have to go out of your way. If a guy likes you, he's going to find you.
Yes, and I have compassion for women now because we're so, we're doing it all, and we're entrepreneurs and we're go-getters, but there is something kind of old-fashioned about that.
You flirt, you can kind of send the message, I'm interested, but let them do the work, girls.
Yes. And
we don't have to do it.
We don't. Take a, relax,
Take
enjoy.
Take a deep breath, get your nails done.
Exactly. And they feel better being able to do that. They feel more manly,
Exactly. They'll appreciate you more. I think women need to just recognize that they're a prize. I was never into unrequited love. Not my thing. Not my thing.
No,
Big turn off. You know
horrible.
what I mean? You step up or step out.
Right. That's great.
Really, step out.
That's
Step out of the way.
That's the attitude.
Yeah, it really was.
And you
I mean, I've been married a long time, but when I was single, that was, if someone didn't measure up, I did not want them around. I really didn't.
And people need to follow that. And that speaks to what you said earlier about boundaries. That's a huge cornerstone of mental health and good relationships, is to have strong boundaries.
Yeah, set those limits. You don't want unhealthy people in your world because it brings you down.
Right.
For married couples, I know you see married couples or couples in general. Some tips on Valentine's Day for people who are in relationships and butting heads or having communication issues.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if you're familiar with the Gottman Institute, on relationships, and they found that communication wasn't actually one of the top things that couples need. Like, they've studied these couples for decades, and contrary to what we think, it's not as much communication as it is some of these other qualities. But I think if they're having problems, turning toward each other is a big one instead of away. And also working on the ego thing, the need to be right. And that's just going to get in your way instead of being curious, like we do as therapists. You be curious about the other person and why they think the way they do and where they're coming from, trying to get your own biases out of it.
Yeah. And
just showing empathy. That's the fundamental for a good relationship.
I'm laughing as you're talking because I'm thinking about J-Lo was, I guess, talking about what her future mother-in-law told her as advice. And I thought it was really good advice. Be a little deaf. And, don't feed into everything, which I thought was really brilliant.
Yeah,
know when to let go.
Right.
Know when to be thoughtful. Just kind of forgive fast if it's over the right things.
Yes.
And just stay on course. I think we need to think of relationships as a creative endeavor that you're constantly creating. So think about the relationship you want to create and be actively involved in making that happen.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like what we do for ourselves, right? We're always creating ourselves.
Right.
And you slip up sometimes and you pick up the pieces and move on, see what you can learn from it.
Yeah. But I think if you've been with someone long enough, you learn to appreciate some of their strengths. And also getting older, we tend to see our partners from a much more positive vantage point, which is kind of nice. That's the advantage of getting older.
Yeah.
We tend to be more just lenient and appreciative.
You know how fragile life is.
Yeah. Exactly. We're going to do the quick 5, where we ask you some questions so people can get to know you.
Fine.
When you have 30 minutes of free time, how do you pass the time away?
Oh, I am a big book nerd, so I read a lot.
Okay.
And I do, and it is always about human behavior, though. That's my passion.
Me too.
And spirituality.
We're
the same.
kindred spirits in that way. What's the most interesting thing you've read or seen this week?
Most interesting thing I've read or seen. Well, I would say this is funny. I was mentioning I got pickpocketed yesterday at LaGuardia Airport. And so I thought, of course, that was a huge hassle and I'm still dealing with it. But I thought, I need to apply what I teach my clients, that it's not the circumstances, it's your reaction to it. And so that's been an interesting experience to practice what I preach there.
Especially under those circumstances. See, that would push me over the edge, to be honest with you. What was your favorite fairy tale growing up?
Oh, my mother used to sing Puff the Magic Dragon to me, and I just, and Somewhere Over the Rainbow, she sang those too, and it just made me believe. It just made me believe in the fairy tale that we really can create here.
Yeah.
Because it is our perspective.
You know what mine was?
What?
Sleeping Beauty.
Oh.
Yeah, she had to do nothing except for sleep. And her prince found her anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's
like
point
the great,
to what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the great fairy tale for the lazy, like myself. What is the most important object you own?
Object.
Object.
This ring was my grandmother's. It was cut in the 1930s, and my grandfather gave it to her, and I just think of her every time I look at it.
Oh,
She's
it's
like
gorgeous.
a fairy godmother to me. Thank you.
Oh, it's beautiful. What personality trait do you wish you had?
Okay, I think that, so my natural tendency is like the melancholic artist, you know, which comes with, I can feel everything.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I don't really, but sometimes I wish I could not feel so sensitively.
Right.
Because you feel it all,
pick
including
up
the pain. Yeah.
I know.
So I don't really wish I didn't have, but maybe wish I could have better.
Just that it would
boundaries.
feel good all the time.
Yeah, it would feel good. I'll feel those great ones all the time.
All the positives without the
Right.
pain. I know we said that we were going to talk about politics quickly. Let's give a quick minute, because in the dating world, I've heard from patients of mine that if they mention politics, it could be a turnoff, or some people have said, if you voted this way or that way, don't call me. And I've had certain patients who were very insulted by that. Quick tip for somebody who's talking politics on dates or even in a long-term relationship?
Well, we have to remember that extremes are unstable fringes. And if you're, you know, the center point is always the most balanced and stable point. And if you're that judgmental about either way, then you're the person with hate.
Yeah.
So if someone's putting out that kind of hate, then you don't want them anyway. And if you're thinking about doing it, it really speaks poorly on you to wipe out, you know, half the population.
Not to get to politics, because I try not to talk about politics too much, but really the best way to move forward is to not talk in an echo chamber, to talk with people who have different ideas, think about the purpose. That's how we move forward. We don't move forward by talking to people with only our ideas. That's true in relationships as well. Tell people where they can find you and what books and courses you have out there. We'll also have a link.
I am at heatherhans.com. That's last name is Hans. And everything's on there. My course is going to be launched this month.
So excited.
So, yeah, it will all be there.
Okay, terrific. Well, congratulations on all of your exciting projects.
Thank you so
and thank you for visiting us in New York City. Happy Valentine's Day week to you, and we wish you the very best, both in your love life and life in general. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.